This is an open letter for my pink skin friends in the United States and around the world. My pink skin friends, I love you, man. I love you. The people of the world loves you. That's why they follow you everywhere. That's why their fashion is your fashion is their fashion. That's why your technology is their technology. So, my pink skin friends, people of the world love you. That's why, they try to act like you, talk like you in English. Uh, they love you, but here is a but. They do not. They want to follow you. They don't want your overbearing presence on their neck. My pink skin friends, other people love you, other races love you. That's why that's why the Indians use all those, whitening creams or fairing creams or, bleach. They use on their skins cream that's basically bleaches the color in your pigments, bleaches the pigments that are in your skin. The fairness creams, they use fairness creams all the time. And that's a good thing. They want to look more like the people they admire. The pink skins. And that's why all these, what beauty looks like. It's a Scandinavian facial structure is what beauty looks like. Now we have to all head that way, look like them in order to, hopefully be like them. Well, they get the surface, they don't get the substance. They don't have the substance. They got the surface, but they don't have the substance. And the substance is collective high IQ, high average IQ, higher average IQ, not in terms of humanity is high average IQ. In terms of galaxy wise, nobody thinks you have high IQ. Average, maybe still lower than average, but that's where all the war comes from, because lower than average IQ creates wars. If my pink skins friends, if they told you that you're over there in their country fighting for your freedom, it's sort of like kind of makes sense, because they connected this to, if we don't have to fight, if we don't fight them there, we have to fight them over here. Well, then that was Hitler's idea. I have to go fight them over there in their country. So we don't have to fight them here. He took over all of Europe. Almost. You get the gist. Under the disguise of protection, you guys, my pink-skinned friends, I don't know why you're so paranoid. Under this disguise of protection, you have decided, well, your leaders, not you're being played. Your leaders have decided that we need to expand out in order to protect ourselves at the middle. We need to expand out in order to protect ourselves in the middle. Well, if you do think like that, then it makes sense to have one world government. And nobody has a problem with that. As long as, as long as the emperor makes love to the concubines, that's fine. But, it's, Uncle Sam's thing. And all other nations, have to, somehow deal with the big boss. But the whole idea of then getting down and dirty, down, on the ground and trying to show one of these motherfuckers what the boss can do when the boss, wants to do, is, and that means, taking over Iraq, taking over Afghanistan, and trying to get back Syria for the French. I mean, the British got their old colony Iraq and Afghanistan, and now, Uncle Sam was trying to see if, the French can get their old colony back in Syria. Folks, we are back at square one. We are back at square one. I mean, yes, there are backward governments around the sphere that you're living on. There are backward governments. Yes, of course there are backward governments, but so are you as compared to, a very much more forward technology and governance than you by, a couple of million years. So nobody's perfect and everybody's on a curve, and the more backward regimes, you want to leave them as they are, as a subject of study, first-hand study of stages of evolution of societies. You want to just deal with them, pay them a little more, keep them as ornaments of what was the past forms of government. As long as you keep them in the game and pay them under the table, and so the order is not lost. The point here is the order. You want order, whoever the fuck is keeping the order anywhere, and things seem to be under order, that's a good guy. Then it's basically a good guy. There are more people alive under his rule than dead. So that means, well, he's done well. I think that those are the ones that have been, just get the casualties. See which countries have, internal warfare inside the country with each other, inside the area. Forget about countries. There are areas, there are geographies on Earth. There is a mountain and then there is a valley, and the people are living in the valley, and the conservative ones are living on the mountains, and the liberal ones are living on the valley. And the very liberal ones, are living by the oceans. So that's as simple as it gets. Conservative, height, liberal in the seaside. So at the seaside, it's just the scale that things go on Earth based on your geography, because people more aggregate towards more lower parts, because the valleys produce more than the mountain tops, mountain ranges. So people gravitate towards the valleys. Shores produce more in terms of exchange and business, so they congregate around oceans. It's as simple as it gets. So you do not need to try to, people of the shores that are very liberal because they have been seen every kind of it. These guys will always not understand the language of people who are living on the highlands, because they are what they left behind from the mountaintops to live in more variety, with more variety and more in the valleys. So the people in the mountaintops are going to be always very conservative, and their evolution, if you let it be, their social evolution will take effect. It just takes effect a little, it's slower. But all you need to provide them is information. They will come along. There is no need for if the guy is keeping order, and there are, you know, there are less people who have died under his leadership, that means that's a good thing. Yeah, even Saudi Arabia could be considered a good thing, because I guess that's how the Saudis should be run. They don't, you know, understand much. Yeah, but then that on the same token, when Assad is running things in Syria, he should be left alone. Yes, he's not taking order from the French. I'm sorry, but you know, he's found his balls somewhere. So a local warlord, a local leader of a very inhospitable, arid land on your earth is, you know, he thinks he's worth something. I'm sorry, he thinks he's worth something. It's a landlocked country with, you know, a little border, but mostly desert. And leave them alone, Uncle Sam. You don't need to be involved there, because I mean the local guy had things under order until you injected a lot of weapons to have the cocksuckers fight for their freedom. Freedom from what? Freedom from order. Then what kind of order we're going to have in a desert? What kind of order, Uncle Sam, do you think one country can form in a desert beside the order that was stable? What is this freedom thing that freedom at the heart of the empire? Freedom does make sense. Freedom of speech does make sense, but have you lived in a desert? Have you? Here's the things, folks. These motherfuckers are hard. The guy suddenly decides that no, I should be the leader. I have a bigger penis. This is how their system has been set up ever since whenever, and I should have a say in this. And what the people see on the internet, which thank God for the internet, what people see is that, wow, things could be very different than what I'm seeing in my streets. You know, the guy living in Honduras, the guy living in Nicaragua, the guy living in, you know, Ghana. The guy, they see on TV how you pinkskins have, you know, set up your environment. They see it on their screens, in very small little screens, but they see it, and more, you know, there are some movies still going hyperbolistic and, you know, comical, but there are still some normal movies that shows normal life in a normal law-abiding kind of setup, and they want that, but they don't see it around them. And you cannot provide them, Uncle Sam, with that kind of micromanagement, as if like knocking over an order and saying that no, we are here, we're going to give you a new order. Folks, if they understand, if they were at the level of evolution of societies that they understood, or their geography or their culture or their mentality was set up at this point, is it set up to understand it? Maybe not. Maybe, you know, just send them tourists and send them teachers. Maybe one day they will understand it. They will be all set up that they will all accept if everybody's vote is important enough we set up some kind of participation of smaller minds. But as it is, what their system is set up is, you know, no participation of smaller minds, only me because I have the big penis. So maybe this is how it's set up. Believe me, in not only at the top level you see that's the way it's set up, but at the lower levels you also see, you know, a very top to bottom kind of approach to problems. the guys with the bigger penis at the top and the guys with the shorter penis at the bottom. That kind of a setup is not a very democratic kind, but this is, tribal system. This is what they could have managed to create order. Individuals are not very responsible, but tribes hold them responsible and pull their nuts if they act responsibly. And this pulling of their nuts, sort of like you can say that would be sort of like the Saudis chop heads off on Fridays to make sure the public understand who has the bigger penis. My law, my penis, my law, my rule. You shut the fuck up or I chop your head off. Even, as they did it to their journalists outside the country. And this is how they're set up. This is an ally who does this. The enemy, the Iranians, they do the same shit too. This is how they're fucking set up. Mentally, do you get the point? But their system is set up like that. They are at that level of social evolution. They're still not, at your level, my pink-skinned friends. But what they don't need is your participation in trying to move them forward, because that costs a lot of lives, every side with a lot of casualties. Why? If it can be avoided, it certainly can be avoided. Send them tourists. Your tourists are being held up in cruise ships. Well, when your tourists actually could do what your soldiers are doing, have to do 20 years later, 30 years later, 40 years later, 50 years later. Why leave it to the soldiers? Send tourists? Pay the soldiers to go there as tourists. Can I say it as simple as this? Yep. Bring back the draft, but not have an army. Draft people in at that age of 18, 19, draft people in and send them overseas. It's like, hey, it's your national duty as the representative of the empire to go and see what the fuck is going on in that shithole over there as a tourist for 2 months. For 2 years. Draft, I'm sorry, not 2 months, 2 years. For 2 years of your military service, as a service to your land, you should spend 2 years of your life living as a tourist in anywhere in the world except Uncle Sam's property. 2 years, mandatory. Between 18 and 20, best time. You give the you allow the exactly what the Mormons are doing, I think they're doing. This is something like that, and that's why Mormons are very much more sympathetic to everybody than your downright Baptist. But the point is this. I think you gotta snap out of it. Folks, you do not need to remove any kind of order because you got a better one coming. You don't have a better one coming because if they're not at the level of understanding what other people's opinion matter, they're not at the level of understanding democracy, and that's it. Sociologist kind of a puzzle to solve, not a military kind of puzzle to solve. I mean, if you need to push these governments into the 21st century, okay, provide them with tourists. Have your people go talk to them, between the ages of 18 and 20, 2 years draft, but not with a gun, with your backpack, my friend. Jack, Jane, Gina, George. 2 years, your Uncle Sam's draftees, you have to spend outside of Uncle Sam's territory. Why? Because you're going to tell them about what is, what we have been teaching you in our system, in our schools and media. That's 18 years we have done that as the, empire. Now you have 2 years to go over there and see what's going on there, and see the world from that local's perspective. And by the time they're back, they would be speaking the local language, assuming they do come back. If they don't come back, even better. Americans living overseas are a great representative of the individuality of the importance of individuality. Let's put it this way. America has one message for the rest of the planet, is that America wants to advocate the importance of individuality. Democracy is what it is, giving importance to the individuality. So that's what democracy is. So you basically you're trying to export this idea that the individual is important. Don't follow your leaders too much. Don't don't follow your leaders blindly. This is the message of democracy. Democracy basically is giving fair chance for everybody to have its say, so nobody has to follow anybody blindly. Everybody has to put their cards on the table and say what they mean and mean what they say. This is what democracy, or else we are not going to elect you again. Say what the reason Trump wasn't re-elected is because a lot of people after 4 years realize that he doesn't mean what he says, and he doesn't say what he means. He says something but does something else. He says, I have a healthcare plan, but he didn't come up with a healthcare plan. He just, was just wanted to, destroy this one, remove this one, and folks, my earthly friends, you're still tribal. Even if you think tribal, you want to take care of your tribes people before sending soldiers to take your message of individual freedom, importance of individual freedom at the end of their guns. No, the message of importance of individual freedom is you have an 18-year-old who has learned 18 years of importance of individual freedom in his system and some education, hopefully. After 18 years, you send this guy for 2 years to some shithole, and you subsidize. That's what army is. It's subsidized living. Government pays for army folks to live with government's money. It's a kind of subsidized living. Well, the government can pay for these guys to live over there. The same government that is paying for the soldiers to, be under some kind of a command and a structure and be ready to do whatever. Well, the same government can pay to John here provide the same subsidized living or equivalent of, in dollars and cents, of same equivalent of subsidized living to John over here to go and live in Indonesia for 2 years. Hey John, here Uncle Sam will pay you, just like instead of sitting in a barracks and practicing shooting, Here, John, Uncle Sam will pay you 2 years salary to go learn. Not shooting, but shoot photography. They're both shots. You shoot with a gun and you shoot with a camera. Shoot with camera. Bring back proof Uncle Sam likes to see that how well your 2 years went. And here is a monthly salary that I'm paying this soldier. Now I'm paying this monthly salary to a learner. Go teach them English. Well, English has become the international language. So go teach them English. My John and Jill, both of you, go teach them English. And for you religious nuts, I'm not, but you can also say, hey, if you're religious, you can also teach them about your religion. That would be Christianity. I'm not really okay with it, but if you have to, have that attached somewhere to get the masses off their asses, yeah, you can attach that. And you get, a few pointers there. You might get a few evangelicals on your side, but that would be totally a personal matter. It wouldn't be the institution's mission. That wouldn't be the institution's mission. And you can even let the army run it. Hey, army, instead of allow 20% of your system to do this, start doing this. Allow 20% of the army start operating a draft structure in order to send these, draftees 2 years overseas. Sending them and, sort of like monitoring them. You can monitor them. You can have, sort of like a parole officer over there. It's kind of structure that they have to go and check in every month to everybody knows everything is okay and all is good. And that would be great. That would be great. Because they teach them English on a personal level if they want to teach them their own religion, whatever that is. But remember, sometimes that religion might be, other than Christianity. But still, it's if they want to teach their religion, whatever the imaginary things they believe in, they can share them with the locals. Why not? But remember this: language of the whole sphere would be spread more, so people can understand each other better. The language will spread more. That's a good thing. And money. In this way, Uncle Sam basically gets to inject a little money to the local systems to keep them all, fat and happy. Through tourism, through the system of tourism, instead of selling them guns, you and have your own corporations also go in and take care of these tourists, as in the form of whatever. Get permission. Probably they won't give it to you at the beginning. They don't want your corporations, but first send them tourists for a couple of decades. Then eventually they get so fat and happy that they're not even worried about losing some business to your corporations. But the point is this, folks. Life on earth is what you make of it. You want to be aggressive and paranoid and make life difficult for everyone around you. On the planet-wise, on the planet scales, we are talking about tribes living by the seasides. a little cluster here, a little cluster there, a little cluster there. You do understand that none of these clusters of humanity, none of them really, it's like cluster-wise, clusters of humanity in a few populated nodes on Earth. For one reason or other, one node has become more popular than other nodes of dirt on the planet. Is it that important? Everybody's from fucking some node. Nobody was born in the middle of a desert. Literally in the middle of this desert, his or her mom popping her out. Nobody was born like that. Everybody was born in a cluster of humanity who got together and decided to form a tribe, who became tribes and then what you call countries. Why this aggressiveness and paranoia? Is it not enough? Aren't you producing enough? Can't you produce enough for everyone? So you don't have to fight over it. I think if you stop fucking and reproducing, I think you can achieve food independence without having to kill anybody. Just don't reproduce anymore. The more you reproduce, the more you have to produce, and the more you have to produce, the more you disturb the planet and the more you disturb the nature. So make things last longer. You don't need to reproduce much, and you don't need to produce much. Try to make things that last longer, or have a very efficient recycling system. But that doesn't. All of this doesn't give you permission to, take over other pieces of land, as if like, okay, we are managing our piece of land really nicely. We're going to, take over somebody else's piece of land because we think we can do a much better job. It's been 20 years, Uncle Sam. You can't do a better job because no external power can do a better job of creating order than the guy who had already order. He had order. Although you were strangling him, he still had order. His penis was that big. So, why remove the system that is working and he has created order? Why cut a deal with him? Why not cut a deal with him? Whatever. Becomes a relic for your students to study and go over there and study how fucked up things can be, how fucked up our own system used to be. This is the live example of it. And then send them tourists until everybody over there understands what you think, and if they like it, they will follow. That is the importance of individualism. Basically, by sending these tourists, Uncle Sam, you are sending them your idea of importance of individualism. Because these 2 years, these people, your people, Americans, kids 18 to 20, form relationships over there that during these relationships they teach and learn from the locals. They teach the importance of individualism, and they learn the variety that life can be lived at. They're not going to be living in a lap of luxury over there. They're going to be basically whatever Uncle Sam pays a soldier, Uncle Sam should pay to one of these tourists, whatever salary. And their job is just live over there. I don't want you to, learn how to shoot. I want you to learn how to think. Have a different perspective. Learn about a different perspective. Learn about a different perspective in life. If this happens, your planet will be thinking the same way with no problem in 100 years. Folks, social evolution doesn't happen overnight. Importance of the tribal mentality of the importance of the tribe is very strong. And if you're advocating for individuality, advocating it at the end of a sword is you're not activating, you're not advocating individuality. At the end of the sword, you're advocating for your penis. That I got a bigger penis. That's when you say we go fight them over there so we don't have to fight them over here. Dude, what do you think is going to result when you fight them over there? You're disturbing their homeland. Now you have a problem because they disturbing their homeland. Now their people are over there. Before, their people were not. There were no Libyans in France. There were few Libyans in France. Much fewer Libyans in France were living in France before the fall of Gaddafi than there are Libyans living in France after the fall of Gaddafi. So, I mean, if your objective is that we are going to go, because you're disturbing their fucking thing. You're embargoing them. You're selling arms to some of them. You're embargoing some other of them. And then, you're trying to tip their orders over so you can put up your own order under your own order. Is it better? Have you found the golden calf? If the order that you're bringing is the kind of order that is taking place at on the east coast of Mediterranean, if that is the kind of order you have in mind, that's the most disorderly place on earth, has been for the past 100 years. The east coast of Mediterranean. You see what I'm saying? So I'm not. You got to think. You got to understand that it's just costly going over there and trying to embargo them until they tip over so some other form of government can be formed, which can it's been 20 years in Iraq. Does it have the stability that Saddam had, the kind of order that Saddam was able to create? All you had to do is stop embargoing Saddam, and his economy was okay, would get on its feet, and send them tourists. And eventually, with tourists, the whole tourist bringing money, subsidized by Uncle Sam, the money that Uncle Sam has paid these tourists to spend over there, that becomes, everybody in his land become fat and happy, and they all jump up and down and sing and dance. So it's like you could have changed Saddam from Saddam to a clown by sending him tourists. let me repeat again. You could have changed Saddam from what we understand of what kind of fucking shit he was. We could have changed him from that to Saddam the clown if, there were 10,000 tourists in his country, 20,000 tourists in his country for a couple of decades. I mean, you would be Saddam the clown. All this money has made his people fat and happy, and everybody's dancing in the street and praising Saddam. There was no need for any of this. For, trying to, he doesn't understand democracy and we are going to be liberating them. Liberating them from what? The order? That cocksucker had created order in that way. Because over there is rough country. Rough people, believe me, I know. It's a rough country because it's a poor country, because it's a dry country. So all you have to do is send them tourists and everything is fine. In a decade, you would have Saddam the clown. Because at that point, so much happiness and, so much money through tourism has been brought to his country that, he would be glad to make love to Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam would, and, treat him with some kind of fucking respect that you can treat, a warlord scumbag. But, treat him like that because he has kept order. That warlord scumbag has kept order. Rough countries have rough leaders. I lived in one for a time. I was born in fucking one for some. But they're shitty people. Do I care to have any contact with them? No. Not at all. Nobody. No, I don't want to have any contact with, people who are. I think they're shitty because my values is much different than them. So they're shitty people. They're but they're from poor land. And when you're from poor land, you're from poor land, you become a little, shitty. Because the land over there is poor. Still, even with the oil, because the Saudis, have to invest much of that oil money in the pink skin country, even though they have the oil, but still 40% of Saudi Arabia is living under poverty. 40% of the population of Saudi Arabia, which is, there is a bonanza in terms of tourism that it brings for Hajj, and Saudi Arabia that has so much money makes so much money through tourism and the oil, and it's having 40%, but its population is like 30 million. Having 30 million and having 40% of them living in poverty, and Uncle Sam, 15 of the 19 were from these, poverty-stricken Saudis. That they eventually, they're stupid, but they still eventually understood that their oil is going for their oil money is being invested not in their own little shed hole of the sandbox, but this goes to personal funds and sovereign wealth funds and wherever there goes, the average Saudi usually doesn't get any. At least 50% of them that don't get any. So, and that's the problem. It's like 15 of the 19 were of the hijackers of 9/11 were Saudis, and they have been, telling you that Saudis are friends. Well, the local warlord that we have chosen to deal with is very unpopular for his people. And on top of all that, instead of sending them tourists, Uncle Sam, you have sent them soldiers. And the protest of one of their main protests of these desert dwellers, one of their main protests was that we don't want soldiers on the ground. They're desecrating this fucking piece of shit land that we have. They're desecrating it, and this is holy land, and the pink-skinned soldiers should not be there. I don't care whether they had a point or they didn't have a point, because I don't think any piece of land is very much more important than any other pile of land on this planet of yours, with some water and some land and some dirt on this side and some dirt on that side. In this kind of system, I don't know what to expect. So you're not really helping anybody by sending soldiers. This is the point of the whole talk, is that you don't really need to send soldiers. All you need to send is tourists. You will get information, you would imagine, and you can open that tourist shop under the, information department of the army or navy, or information department. They have an information or some, they do have their own intelligence department. You can open this branch of, tourist soldier, start with the branding tourist soldier, but drop the soldier, because those countries are going to be, really, pissed a little, feeling overwhelmed, thinking they're going to have a coup over there. No, this is basically a soft coup, a coup that, in 10, 20 years, 30 years, maybe, there is a better understanding by the locals as, importance of individuality, or, importance of not mutilating their females' genitalia in, some parts of Africa and Middle East they do. So the importance of this message would go with your tourists. And what you're getting back is a lot, Uncle Sam. What you're getting back from these citizen tourists, instead of citizen soldiers, citizen tourists. After the 2 years, what you're getting back is like pure local information. You need to you need contacts, talk to him. I mean, if your intelligence systems need contacts, talk to him. Not to interfere like overtly, to know what's going on. If you need to know what's going on, what's taking place there, because every month you have 10, 20, 30 people of your people who are living there come home. You need to talk to them to understand what's taking place on the ground. That's your best bet. But not with any malicious intent. Just with the idea of, that's it. Army doesn't need guns. Army needs, intelligence. If you get the intelligence, then your, economists can make decisions that, affect that, because all things, everything goes to their stomach. If there's some needs that they have, usually it's Usually it's a physical need, they food or shelter, something like that. Some area of the earth happens from time to time, people need something, some kind of help. Army should be basically just helping. The rest of the army that remains, the army should be tourists. Whatever your army is doing, tourists should be doing, and will do a great job of it. And then whatever they bring the information back, and then the politicians and the economists can make decisions that would, solve the problem over there. Instead of the system that you got, that by embargoing certain countries, you're trying to break the order. Just work with the order. Send them tourists. You think they think very differently than you? If you find there is a problem in a country, you send them more tourists. You see, a friendly country like Britain doesn't need to get any American tourists. They more or less think alike. They have the same information, they have the same perspective. But if you have a problem with Cuba, you should send more tourists. If you have a problem with, Colombia, with Venezuela, you should send more tourists. That would be these are the people that you're paying to live in some country for 2 years. Just live as a tourist, as a student of language. Let's call it student of language. Call it that if you have to. But they're tourists of culture. They're tourists of ideas. They become tourists of change. They become the best source of information for the empire to learn about the colonies, the rest of the planet, so they can make good decisions, so people would suffer less in certain parts of the planet, not more. Folks, you're trying to keep with order. You don't want to create too much disorder. People get, more casualties in disorder than there is in order. The problem is the casualties. The problem is not imaginary lines on the ground. The problem is not God, your gods that you got. The problem is not your religions. None of that is your problems. None of that is your problems. Your problem is, you're miscommunicating. They are not where you are, and you are not where they are, and they're different cultures. You want to create more harmony, send them tourists. You want to make them more like you, send them tourists, not soldiers. Teach them importance of individuality with your tourists. In that way you change the order over time, not bang bang. Not no bang bang is not necessary. Keep order through understanding better. Hey, what's your problem? Hey, what's your problem? How can we solve it? How can we solve it? We solve them with more tourists. Send them more tourists. Find out what is the real problem. More tourists, more information, more contact, more intelligence. Hopefully, better decisions by very educated leaders. PhD with 25 years of teaching experience. Minimum qualification for an executive seat of such magnitude should be a PhD with 25 years of teaching experience.